morning, everybody. Welcome to all of you here in Waterloo. Welcome to everybody watching in Kitchener, in Westside, over in Chatham, and if you're online. My name's Pete, and I'm one of the pastors here. And this is the first week of this series that we're calling When Everything is Unraveling. When I was finishing my degree here at Laurier, my English degree, I started to get the feeling like God was calling me to do what I'm doing right now. And I had a mentor at the time, and I sat down with him for coffee, and I said he was a preacher as well, and I said, I think I'm supposed to do what you do. How do I get there? What do I do next? And he said, well, you should go to seminary, which is like pastor school, and you should do like some sort of master's degree. And so I prepared to finish my degree in English, and then to go to Tyndale, which is the seminary that I went to. And all along, my mentor was meeting with me, and he talked to me about different things. And I remember one day before I went to seminary, we had a coffee, and he said this to me. He said, I got to get you ready for something that is going to happen to you while you're at seminary. And I was like, oh, like I really leaned in. It's like, what is it? I'm going to find a wife? Is that what it's going to be? And he said, something's going to happen to you while you're there. See, you've been a Christian your whole life. You grew up in the church. You've always kind of known Jesus. And what's going to happen to you when you go to seminary and you start to take these master level classes is that it's going to feel like the house of faith that you've lived in for a long time is like being torn down wall by wall. It's going to feel like as you get some new ideas that you haven't heard of before, some academic perspectives, some new wisdom, it's going to feel like a wrecking ball is attacking the house that you've lived in your whole life. But don't worry. Because what's going to happen is that through the process, you're going to build something that is better, that is truer, and that is stronger. And it's going to make you a better preacher. And so I went to seminary, and I found that he was exactly right. But because he had told me ahead of time, it helped me so much with the season that I had to go through of feeling like I was homeless. Of feeling like, oh, there's my old house. Oh, I wonder what the new house is going to look like. It was okay because he had said, like, this is actually part of the process. This is actually a part of being a follower of Jesus, is that you can have moments and seasons of life where everything needs to get torn down so that you can build something up that is better and truer and stronger. And so this series, When Everything is Unraveling, is for those of you who feel like you have maybe been through a season like that, who feel like you're in a season like that. It's for people who may have a season like that coming up. It's for people that are parents who identify, I think my kids are going through a season like that. It's for anybody with friends that feel like they're going through a season like that. Anybody who's maybe just an evangelist and wants to help other people see through that and get through that season. And you may not know this, but this season has actually like a term to it that has become a little popularized over the last few years, and it's called deconstruction. Have you heard of deconstruction before? Like, oh, I'm deconstructing. It's the idea that of questioning your inherited faith. It's the idea of saying like, yeah, at some point you were handed something. At some point somebody taught you something. And a little ways down the road after that, you might go through a season where you go, I think I need to question this thing that was handed to me because I didn't actually fully understand it. And actually there might be some errors in it, either in how it was presented to me or how I currently understand it. And so I need to take it all apart. This is called deconstruction. And you may be in that season and you didn't realize it had a name. And now you're like, oh, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm taking it all apart. And it can be spurred on by like a question that somebody asks, by like a podcast episode that you hear, by maybe a Bible verse that you read and you go, oh, wait a second, what could that mean? And suddenly everything feels like it's unraveling. This series, I hope, will have the effect of us going through these ideas together. And because you're aware that this is just a part of what it means to follow Jesus sometimes, is to take it apart, that you'll come out the other side with something that is stronger and truer and better. Because there are kind of two ways out of deconstruction. There's the positive side of deconstruction. I'm going to take it all apart to build something better. Great. But the other thing that happens to a lot of people who begin to deconstruct their faith is that it is actually their exit to Christianity. It is actually like I took it all apart, didn't know how to put it back together, so I just moved on. And obviously, I hope that over the next 5 weeks, I don't lead you to an exit of Christianity. Hopefully, we'll be able to build something that is better and truer and stronger. And for those of you who maybe aren't deconstructing because you're actually on the outside of Christianity, you're looking in, you got a lot of doubts, you actually have a great place to start from because you don't have to deconstruct anything. You didn't construct anything in the first place. And so what we're going to do in the series is build, like brick by brick, a strong foundation that will lead you to a beautiful house for your faith, a beautiful house that you can live in as you become a follower of Jesus. And so today what we're going to look at is one set of kind of like fundamentals of what it means to follow Jesus. And you know what I mean by like fundamentals? If you played any sports ever, the idea of like getting back to the fundamentals is something that you have to continually do. So when you're learning how to play a sport, like you start with the fundamentals and then eventually you get to more like complicated things. But as like maybe some of those things break down, like whether it's your basketball shot or like I was a quarterback, so I threw. Sometimes you could get focused on like the ball's not doing what I want it to do, and then you focus on the ball. Well, your coach will usually tell you, no, you don't focus on the ball. Don't even focus on your arm. Throwing is from the ground up. Throwing is actually all about your feet. Get your feet right, and your arm will take care of itself. I think that this series might have that effect for some of you who are focused on the ball. You're focused on your arm, you're focused on things up here, and actually, you can deconstruct those, you can let go of those, because what you need to do is focus on your feet. You need to focus on the foundation, on the fundamentals. And so, we're going to get to some of those today, but first, to get there, we have to be introduced to a man named Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche is a German philosopher who lived in the late 1800s. And Nietzsche famously wrote a parable of the madman, the parable of the madman, and it goes like this. He says, a madman early one morning grabbed his lantern and he went into the marketplace and he began to ask people in the marketplace, where is God? Where is God? He actually uses the word whither. He says, the madman jumped into their midst and pierced them with his eyes. Whither is God? He cried. I will tell you. He begins to say, where is God to these people? And the people in the marketplace, they kind of like play along with the madman. They're like, oh, I don't know. Maybe he's hiding. Maybe he's under this stool. Where is God? I don't know. Finally, the madman says, oh, where is God? I'll tell you where he is. We have killed him, you and I. All of us are his murderers. But how did we do this? How could we drink up the sea? Who gave us the sponge to wipe away the entire horizon? What were we doing when we unchained this earth from its sun? Whither is it moving now? Whither are you moving? Away from all suns? Do we not feel the breath of empty space? Has it not become colder? Is not night continually closing in on us? Do we not need to light lanterns in the morning? Do we hear nothing as yet of the noise of the grave diggers who are burying God? He goes on and on in this parable, this madman. Where is God? Where is God? Don't you realize that we have done away with God? Don't you realize that we have replaced God? Don't you realize that the shovels are in the ground and we are digging the grave for God? And then the madman goes silent as he looks at his audience. And the audience goes silent. And the madman realizes, my message isn't speaking to you because I've come too soon. Because this light has not yet reached you. You don't realize it yet that you've killed God, but you have. And so I've come too soon. And then the parable ends like this. It has been related further that on the same day, the madman forced his way into several churches, and there struck up his eternal rest to God. Let out and called to account, if you were to ask him, like, what are you doing? He is said to have always replied, nothing but this. What, after all, are these churches now if they are not the tombs and sepulchres of God? What a provocative, interesting parable, no? We have killed God. Oh, you don't realize we've killed God? Oh, you will realize it eventually, but it's happened. It's already happened. The light from the stars has just yet to reach you. What is Nietzsche talking about? People way smarter than me have studied Nietzsche, and they have discerned what he's talking about. And what he's talking about is something that we'll call the shift into the modern world, the shift into modernity. Now, when I use the word modernity, what I realize is happening with many of you is that you know that that's a word that you're supposed to know what it means. But you don't know what it means. But when you hear it, you know that since you're supposed to know what it means, you just go, oh yeah, modernity? Yeah, the modern world? Yeah, the shift into modernity. Yeah, heard about it. Yeah, okay, just keep going. But secretly inside, you're like, could you please explain to me what that means? Because I've been hearing about it for a long time, and I have no idea what it means. Okay, so let me give you a simple, it's a little bit long, but a simple definition so we can all get on the same page. Nietzsche's talking about the shift into modernity, and that this shift killed God. And so here's a simple definition of modernity. Modernity, think late 15th to 18th century, is the historical and cultural period that prioritized certainty through reason and empirical evidence, seeking objective, verifiable truths to replace reliance on divine revelation or religious tradition. Modernity is the shift from, oh yeah, everyone is religious, everyone believes in God, everyone requires divine revelation and religious tradition. That's how everyone is. It is the shift into the world that is, no, actually, we should prize and prioritize certainty. And how will we get certainty? By reasoning and having empirical evidence, observable facts, repeatable facts, and we should seek objective, verifiable truths. Modernity is the shift from a world of divine revelation and religious tradition into a world that would include things like the scientific revolution. You may have heard this before, that Copernicus is the first to discover that the earth goes around the sun. And that through his writings, Galileo would then really popularize this idea. That, oh no, actually, the sun is not going around the earth goes around the sun. But you know what happens to Galileo? Galileo is silenced by the church. Because the church says, oh no, we have a tradition. And we have a book and it has some verses in it. And those verses tell us that the sun goes around the earth. Those verses say things like the sun stood still. And the earth is the center of all things. We have these verses. And so they silence and place Galileo under house arrest for the rest of his life. But eventually people would realize Galileo was right. And these people were wrong. And so as the shift into modernity, takes place and happens more and more, people more and more begin to question maybe these religious traditions, maybe the idea of divine revelation, maybe the idea of faith, maybe all of this God stuff should be brought into question because it is so questionable, and instead we should seek for certainty through science, through reasoning, through empirical evidence. And Nietzsche, commenting on this 150 years ago, saw that this shift would lead to the death of God. It would lead to people realizing, I don't think we need God anymore. I think we got it from here. I think we understand how the universe works. I think that we understand how to be good people and live good lives. I don't think that we need, so we can put them in the grave. And 150 years ago, Nietzsche's writing this, and people in the churches would be like, nah, that'll never happen. And 150 years later, I think we would say, holy smokes, he nailed that. Do we not live in a culture that has killed God? So here's the more provocative question, though. If the shift into modernity kills God, then what happens to you when you've been handed or taught a version of Christianity that is secretly wrapped in modernity? If modernity leads to the death of God, then what would happen if Christians just fully adopted all of these modern ideas, all of modernism, and we wrapped it around Christianity and we presented it to people and we're like, here, Christianity makes sense in the modern world. What would we be? We'd be handing them a little secret time bomb with a ticker ticking down. It's only a matter of time before this thing leads to the death of your faith as well. What do I mean by Christianity wrapped in modern ideas? Well, it could look like this, that the Bible, instead of being a book of divine revelation, a book that comes from like the East, a book that is filled with mystery and is written in a certain context, in a certain culture, in a certain genre, thousands of years ago, instead of reading the Bible like that, we go, actually, let's treat the Bible like a textbook. Let's treat it like a modern textbook. Let's treat it like a modern historical textbook. Let's treat it like a modern scientific textbook. And when you hand people a Bible like that, you're handing people a vision, a view of the Bible that is wrapped in modernity, and it is a ticking time bomb. Perhaps you were handed a version of Christianity that came packaged with well thought out, reasoned, apologetic arguments. Now, hear me, nothing against apologetics, because our faith, following Jesus, is rational, it's intelligible, it's logical, it is defensible. Yet sometimes when I see certain apologetics that are being popularized on YouTube these days, they present the faith with such there's like an anger behind their voice and a sort of like, if only you would just sit down and reason this out, you'd see how right we are. As if the problem is that like other people who don't believe what we believe just haven't thought it out. What is that? That is Christianity wrapped in, oh, we can make this verifiable and certain for you. And in doing this, what has happened is that we have traded the mysterious, transcendent, majestic, ineffable God for a God who is now wrapped in modernity. We've traded him for certainty, which is something that all of us long for. If only you could hand me a faith that could be certain the way that modernity speaks of certainty. And when you do that, you have lost what it really means to be a Christian and a follower of Jesus. And so if you are on the deconstructing journey, let me suggest to you that it is helpful. And you may have already sniffed this out, that what you're actually pulling apart is you're beginning to separate, wait, what is Christian and what is modern? And if that is the deconstruction work that you are doing, bravo. Good for you. That will help you build something that is stronger and truer and better. And it raises the question then, well, if I were to separate Christianity from modernity, what does Christianity look like? What are some of the distinctives? What is this thing that we are being invited into? And to answer that question, I have 3 words that I want to give you. Actually, it's 4 words, but 3 ideas. 3 ideas of what is it that Jesus invites us into. If it's not modern ideas, if we were to separate those, what is it that we're being invited into? 3 ideas. First one, you've heard this before. Faith. Jesus invites us to follow him and to take a step before we see. Paul will write in one of his letters, we walk by faith, not by sight. What does modernity do? Modernity says, no, you can see it. Everyone can see it. We can repeat it. It can be objective. We can measure it. And then we believe it. Modernity says you can see it and then you believe it. And Jesus over and over says, no, actually, you have to take a step of faith and then you'll see it. And then you take another step of faith and then you'll see it. And it's not like he asks you to like jump in the deep end right off the bat. It's just one step at a time. Would you trust me with this? The first time that he encounters Peter, one of his disciples, he says, hey, would you push out your boat and just throw the nets down again? And Peter eventually does it. What harm? It's not a big risk. He's a little tired. He's a little like, I don't really want to do this, but he does it. And then a miracle, the miraculous catch of fish. And then he begins to follow Jesus. And one step at a time, Jesus will take him deeper and deeper and deeper into this idea of what does it mean to really trust me with your life? And Peter will eventually get out of a boat and walk on water. And Peter will eventually, we know, give his life for the gospel of Jesus the King. Peter doesn't begin there. He begins with, okay, I'll try to throw my nets down on the other side. But faith, trust, allegiance, before sight is like a non-negotiable of following Jesus. Number 2, surrender, control. Surrender, control. You don't get to control this. You don't get to control this faith thing. You don't get to control how this relationship goes. You don't get to control the speed. You don't get to control it. I want to read for you a quick little story from the Gospels where Jesus encounters some guys who are trying to control him. It goes like this. In Mark chapter 11, it says, they arrived again in Jerusalem. And while Jesus was walking in the temple courts, the chief priests and the teachers of the law and the elders came to him. Okay, so the scene. Jesus is in the temple. He's in Jerusalem. And who comes? The chief priests and the teachers of the law and the elders. Who are these guys? These are like the big religious bigwigs. They got all like funny hats on, and they're really smart, and they're really upset with Jesus because like, who are you? And that's what they're going to eventually ask him. They're going to say, by what authority? By what authority are you doing these things? They asked. And who gave you authority to do this? Now it seems like they're coming to him saying, who are you? It seems like they're coming to him asking, would you tell us who you are? It seems like they're actually interested in who he is, but they're not. Jesus replied, I will ask you a question, which is the most Jesus thing ever, right? Jesus, we have a question. You're like, nah, I don't care about your question. I got a question for you. I will ask you a question. Answer me, and then I'll tell you by what authority I'm doing these things. Jesus has sniffed something out here. There's something weird about your question. So before I answer your question, let me ask you a question. John's baptism, was it from heaven or was it human origin? You tell me. So they discussed it among themselves and they said, if we say it's from heaven, then he's going to ask, why didn't you believe him? But if we say that it's of human origin, that they feared the people, for everyone held that John really was a prophet. They're like, crap, he's got us. He's got us. And so what do they say? So they answered Jesus, we don't know. What has been revealed in all of this is that they came seeking to control Jesus. They're like, we got a question, and it's really a trap. And once we trap him, then we'll arrest him. And Jesus is like, missed me. I got a question for you. And he eventually gets them to the point where like they won't even answer the question. Oh, we don't know. I mean, you know. You know what you think. And then Jesus responds, neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things. When people come to Jesus wanting to know who he is, earnestly wanting to know who he is, he reveals who he is to them. But when people come to Jesus who actually are trying to control him, he says, no, you're not going to be able to see me. You don't have the eyes to see me because you're still trying to control me. Jesus can deal with dumb, he can deal with dirty, he can deal with people full of doubts, but he doesn't seem to deal with people who want to maintain control. When you come to Jesus and want to maintain control, he's like, I got nothing, I can't work with that. Fundamental to this whole Christian thing, what we are being invited into is a surrender of control. And thirdly, we're being invited into something that requires revelation. It requires some mystical, mysterious moment experience where God speaks to us and confirms things in us that cannot be scientifically verified. This is fundamental to being a follower of Jesus, is the idea that God reveals things to us through his word, through other people, through times of prayer, through the Holy Spirit, through his Spirit speaking to us. Last year when we did a series similar to this, we did a series called Skeptics Welcome. I introduced you to a guy named Alex O'Connor, who is a bit of like a famous atheist. And actually since that time, it seems like he's blowing up even more. So maybe you've seen him on your different reels and social media feeds. But he famously recently was asked a question about what would it look like if you were to become a Christian. So this guy, he goes around and his whole thing is like I'm seeking after God, but I'm not finding him. And that's kind of what his appeal is to even Christians, because he just seems really genuine in that he's like, if I could meet God, I would love to believe in him, but I just have found no evidence. He's a modern thinker who's trying to find God. And so he's asked in this conversation, so what would it look like if you were to believe? And he has a great answer. He says, well, I know it wouldn't be an argument. I know it wouldn't be like, oh, just some bit of information that I'm lacking. It wouldn't be an argument that convinces me. It would have to be an experience. And he doesn't use this word, but what he's saying is like, it would have to be some sort of revelation. Because if it was an argument, then we could just argue everybody into Christianity. Just give us enough time. Like if you just sit down with me, I can write it all down for you. And then he'll be like, see, you need to be in one of these because I wrote down the argument for you. And even one of the most prominent atheists of our day says like, yeah, that's not the way. That's not how Christianity works. Even he recognizes that that's not what it means to follow Jesus. What it means is it requires some bit of revelation, which is so difficult because if it does require this, then we would love to control this. We would love like, oh, Pete, in the next part of your sermon, show me how to get that revelation because you're trying to control the revelation. But the revelation, we don't get to control it. My middle son, his name's Zeke. He's 10 years old now. And ever since he was about 5, when we would pray together at night, he started to ask like, Dad, every night like we talk to God, where's the part when God talks to us? Well, how do we hear from God? And I would say to him like, but after each time you pray, you should just sit quietly and ask God like, God, I'm listening. And one day he's gonna speak to you. And he'd be, oh, can't wait, well, what's that gonna be like? But then it was years. And he just kept asking, Dad, I never hear from God. We keep talking to him every night. I still haven't heard from him. And then a couple weeks ago, we had a worship night over in Westside. And I brought just Zeke, because I like to do things with my kids and just one-on-one. You know, sometimes as a parent, it's like nice to have the one-on-one. And so me and Zeke came to the worship night. But what I realized is that he came with like a secret agenda because he had arranged with someone that he knows here to get some Victor Wembanyama rookie cards. Victor Wembanyama is like one of the NBA All-Stars. And so Zeke was like, I'm gonna go to the worship night to get these cards. We call them Wembies. I gotta get the Wembies, Dad. And so we come and we're supposed to meet the person before the worship night. And we meet the person, but they forgot the cards. To which Zeke was like, what the heck? This is the only reason I'm here. It wasn't that dramatic, but he was let down. He was disappointed. It was like, I guess we'll go worship God, okay. So we go and we start to sing and there's music and people speak. And at the end of the night, we drive home. And in the silence of the drive home, Zeke says, Dad, tonight I heard God speak to me. And he started to try to articulate it, but he didn't have words for what that meant. It wasn't audible words, but it was, I felt his presence. I felt like he was near me. I just felt his love wash over me. Again, those aren't his words. That's me trying to interpret the language of a 10-year-old. But he had this moment. And it had been years, even for a little 10-year-old, it had been years of waiting for that experience of revelation. But that moment is a moment that now I bring him back to all the time. Zeke, man, remember when God revealed something of himself to you that night? Hold on to that, man. Because you don't get to control those moments. And so when you get them, you hold on to them. Now, an important distinction if you're deconstructing. If I had to like separate out 2 different ways that you could deconstruct, one would be, I'm deconstructing Christianity because I want to build a better Christianity. I'm deconstructing the faith that I have because I want to rebuild a better faith. That'd be like, check mark, good. It's gonna lead you into something better, truer, stronger. But the other version would be, I'm deconstructing Christianity because I'm actually deconstructing these 3 things, because what I would like to do is build a life and a worldview that doesn't require these 3 things. And so what I'm actually deconstructing is that I think faith is stupid, I think I shouldn't have to surrender control, and I think God should reveal himself on my timing, not his timing. And I'm actually gonna work out how none of these make sense, they're not fair, I don't like them, and so I'm gonna deconstruct them in order to build something else. And if that is the journey that you are on, I can tell you just ahead of time, you are exiting Christianity. What you are looking to build is not what Jesus invites us into, which, by the way, you are free to do. Just don't call it Christianity, whatever the Frankenstein thing that you come up with is. Whatever the new thing that you build that you're like, oh, I'm the smartest person who's ever lived and I found the real way to connect with God. And they're like, Okay, just don't call that following Jesus, because following Jesus requires faith and a surrender of control and revelation. But if you're willing to at least be open to these three things, if you're willing to just begin to build a foundation of like, all right, well, whatever I'm building, it's going to have these 3 bricks in it, I can tell you that eventually Jesus will meet you there. And it'll change your approach to how you see the whole thing. It'll change your approach to how you pray. Instead of like, I'm praying to try to get God to do something. I'm praying to, hopefully prayer's gonna work this time. Instead of that, you're like, I pray to connect with God. I pray because I want to spend time with God. Instead of treating the Bible like a textbook, you're like, no, the Bible is a way that God can speak to me. The Bible is alive it's written by people who had divine revelation given to them. And when I read this, it somehow helps me become more aware of God speaking to me. It helps you have a different approach to obedience rather than like, I need to get some gold stars from God and some check marks. It's like, no, I want to just take these steps of faith. Because I find that as I take each one step of faith and obedience, I find that God meets me there and confirms like, this is actually the best way to live. This is actually what's true. This is actually what's good and what's beautiful. And it also might change your approach in that if you have anxiety about like, my house has been broken down and I got to build a new one like today. Because I don't like living with mystery and wonder and unsolved questions and riddles and tension. Maybe when you begin to embrace these 3, it will just help you to slow down and relax. Some people are in such a hurry to figure it all out. And I'm like, you're in a hurry. I don't think God's in a hurry. God seems like the most patient guy you could ever imagine. So patient with the history of the world, so patient with each one of us. And I think it's because the point isn't the ultimate destination. It's, I just want to be with you right now. Oh, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're confused right now. I would love for you to invite me into that moment and be with me there. And then to take another step with him, and then to be there with him, and then to be there with him. Like imagine you got married to someone and you're like, oh, can we just fast forward to the end? Because I kind of know how it all plays out from here. Mortgage, kids, cancer, one of us in the grave, one of the funeral. I kind of already know how to, like, that's not the point. You want to be with this person through all of it. Maybe this will help you just to be like, okay, I can just I don't have to rebuild the whole house today. That might be the journey of the rest of my life to rebuild that whole house, but I'm going to do it with the spirit and a foundation of faith and of surrender and of revelation. Last idea for you today. If maybe all this seems impossible, you're like building a worldview, having like a faith that is like built on these 3, that seems impossible. Because I'm a scientist, because I am a product of the modern world. I need empirical evidence. If that's you, then let me share with you one of my new favorite verses. There's a verse in 1 Peter. 1 Peter is a letter that Peter writes, and it seems like he's writing to a group of Christians who are enduring suffering. And it begins, like if you were to go home and read it today, like chapter 1, it's dense theologically. Like he gets the Trinity woven in there. He's got Jesus the Christ. He's got God the Father. He's got the Holy Spirit. He talks about salvation. He talks about sanctification. He talks about all this stuff. And then he begins to address them. He's like, I know that you're suffering for what you believe, which is like all like heavy. You're like, wow, this is intense. These people believe this. And then he drops this little one line that I think is so beautiful. Though you have not seen him, you love him. He's clearly writing to a group of Christians who are suffering and many of whom will go on to die for their faith. And he acknowledges, I know that you have not seen him, and yet you love him. This is written by Peter. Peter, the guy who got to see him. He got to throw down the nets. He got to walk on water. He got to see Jesus die. He got to see Jesus rise from the dead. If Peter wrote like, oh, I believe, and you'd be like, yeah, you got to see it all, bro. But Peter writes to this group of early Christians, and he's like, I am in marvel at your faith, because though you have not seen him, you love him. Let me tell you from my experience that this can be true. Because I have not seen Jesus, and yet I love him so much. I find him to be so beautiful and worth giving my life to, and I have not seen him. And this can be true for you too. that though you have not seen him, though you will never see him this side of the new creation, you can love him. The question is, do you want to enter into that kind of faith? That though you won't get to see him, you could begin to trust him. You could begin to believe in him, and you could come to the place where you would say, I actually love him, and I've never even seen him. It's this mysterious divine revelation, this thing that only the Spirit of God can do as a gift of his grace to me. Let me pray before we go. Beautiful Jesus, beautiful Savior Jesus, who died on the cross for the sins of the world. You are so gentle and so patient, full of mercy and forgiveness, and you love us more than anybody will ever love us. Your love for us is something that we will never completely understand or be able to comprehend, and we want to know you and to believe in you and to love you. Would you help our unbelief? Would you walk with us as we deconstruct and reconstruct? God, for those of us in the room who feel like they're a little bit homeless, like their faith is unraveling, like they've never been able to ravel up a faith in the first place, God, would you reveal yourself to them and guide them? Father in heaven, we ask these things in the name of your wonderful Son, Jesus. Amen.